Jayo Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Jayo Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayo Gopi Janavalabha Jayo Girivaradari Jayo Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayo Risimhade Jayo Risimhade Jayo Risimhade Jayo Prahlad Maharaj, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj. Prabhupada, 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So we're reading today from 9th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavad Gita. This chapter is called The Most Confidential Knowledge, and verse 14. So we will recite the Sanskrit. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhridavrataha namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhridavrataha namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhridavrataha namasantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Mataji? Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhridavrataha namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Okay, word by word translation. Satatam, always. Kirtayanta, chanting. Mam, about me. Yatanta, fully endeavoring. Cha, also. Dhridavrataha, with determination. Namasyanta, offering obeisances. Cha, and. Mam, me. Bhaktya, in devotion. Nitya yukta, perpetually engaged. Upasate, worship. So, translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Purport. The Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man. His symptoms are described here. A Mahatma is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the Personality of Godhead, He has no other business. He is always engaged in the glorification of the Lord. In other words, he is not an impersonalist. When the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme Lord, praising His holy name, His eternal form, His transcendental qualities, and His uncommon pastimes. One has to glorify all these things. Therefore, a Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who is attached to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, the Brahma Jyotir, is not described as Mahatma. In the Bhagavad Gita, he is described in a different way in the next verse. The Mahatma is always engaged in different activities of devotional service as described in Srimad-Bhagavatam. Hearing and chanting about Vishnu, not a demigod or human being. This is devotion, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, and Smaranam, remembering him. Such a Mahatma has firm determination to achieve at the ultimate end the association of the Supreme Lord in any one of the 5 transcendental rasas. To achieve that success, he engages all activities, mental, bodily, and vocal, everything, in the service of Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. This is called full Krishna consciousness. In devotional service, there are certain activities which are called determined, such as fasting on certain days, like the 11th day of the moon, Ekadashi, and on the appearance day of the Lord. All these rules and regulations are offered by the great acharyas for those who are actually interested in getting admission into the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the transcendental world. The Mahatmas, great souls, strictly observe all these rules and regulations, and therefore they are sure to achieve the desired results. As described in the 2nd verse of this chapter, not only is this devotional service easy, but it can be performed in a happy mood. One does not need to undergo any severe penance and austerity. He can live this life in devotional service, guided by an expert spiritual master, and in any position, either as a householder or sannyasi, or a brahmachari. In any position and anywhere in the world, he can perform this devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus become actually Mahatma, a great soul. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadam Tekam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunata Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvisya Nama He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you everybody for coming. So today, it's quite important verse today, in the 9th chapter, which is it's described as the jewel of Bhagavad Gita, and this verse is especially important because it describes great souls. So which are in these terms the great devotees of Krishna, right? So I would like to begin with a story. So there is a story in Greek mythology. We all may know probably the Trojan War. It has been written by Homer. At least we in high school we took it as part of a regular program in school. And yeah, Homer wrote two eps, and one is Iliad, one is Odyssey. And Iliad basically describes the war, the Trojan War, at least part of it, and Odyssey describes a journey back from one of the characters that was in the war. And the war started because of interesting circumstances. So a wife of a Spartan king, so this is under the Greece region, was stolen by a prince of, so kidnapped in some way by the prince of Troy. And so he kidnapped her, and then the war started. So the Greece was on one side, which had a very powerful army, and on the other side was Troy, which had very good defense. So it had strong walls and also sufficient army. So the Greeks came by the sea. So Troy, if we can imagine, Troy is on the west side of current Turkey, right? So it's also there are historical evidence of mundane history also that Troy actually existed. Also the Trojan War is supposed to happen, but still this is the mythology, so it's a bit added with some stories that are maybe not factual. And yes, so this war lasted for 10 years, and one night all the boats that were basically by the shore were retreated, and when the Trojans saw at the seaside, they didn't see any boats, and they thought, okay, they surrendered, right? The Greeks surrendered, we won, right? But they saw also a wooden horse outside of the gate, and they were at first a bit skeptical. Giant wooden horse, but they still somehow accepted that this could be an offering to goddess Athens, so she would accept this gift. So they put it inside the gate, and during the next night, in this horse there were 30 of the greatest soldiers, Greek soldiers, hiding inside, waiting for night to come. And they finally came out and opened the gate, and all of the rest Greek soldiers came within the gates. And this meant the destruction of Trojan soldiers or Trojan city. So it is described like this. And this is Troy's demise. So they thought, wow, this is a great gift, great offering, and they were actually excited in some way. But then they experienced demise. So also nowadays, maybe some of you knows some analogy that Trojan horses nowadays represents. If maybe, virus. This is the most known one. Anything else? One. These two examples I also these two, maybe something else, but so Trojan horse also, so one is virus. So the virus, maybe it's computer virus is presented as some harmless software, maybe some music program, and then you open it and your computer crashes, right? So it seems good, but then when you click it, it's not so good. And also politics. In politics, in parliament, they had these laws, and these laws are on few pages, And everything is very nice, but then maybe one statement is that breaks everything, like changes complete structure. And this is also, it can be termed as Trojan horse. So it's also something that appears good, but then it's not, at the end it has bad consequences. And also I was thinking of using this analogy, and since we are talking about great souls or Mahatmas, maybe the first topic I would like to speak about is that we can also see a false, so one who is pretending, or maybe others see him, but he is not truly a great soul. So he or she is somehow pretending. And there are very bad consequences of such person, because at first we may see this as beneficial to us. Maybe this is a charismatic leader or of some kind, right? So he has some qualities which are attractive, but then we see that actually it doesn't lead to us to greater happiness or some purification, but quite the opposite. So one thing is that bad consequence of this is that we, with following such persons, is that we get only the partial knowledge. So usually there are some truth in this kind of preaching that he makes, but it's partial, which means that also that we don't aim towards the highest goal in spiritual practices. One more is that that this doesn't bring us, so in Krishna consciousness we strive towards developing loving relationship to Krishna, so this doesn't lead us to this point, but rather it distracts us or even delays our process in some way. Also in future we may have many problems, many confusions because of stepping on such path. So Prabhupada in various spots of Srimad-Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, he describes various such persons. Also he terms it maybe sometimes as false gurus, right? But I would focus specifically on two. So one is that we read about envious and impure personalities. Right, so usually envious personalities have some hidden motive behind them. And one analogy that Prabhupada describes is that it's like a snake that has drank from milk. And with drinking this milk, the milk also becomes poisonous. So if we then we ourselves drink this milk, even though it looks good, we will become also poisoned, right? And similarly, when somebody is envious, and even if he speaks of Krishna, envious or impure, and even if he speaks of Krishna, somehow he will add something that makes the knowledge impure, right? And the second thing, also we read in the purport, it's that Srila Prabhupada writes about impersonalists. So they also strive towards reaching the absolute, so they are on spiritual path, but they see God as impersonal. So they, I can explain this a bit later. So there are still some similarities with Bhakti Yoga and impersonalism. So we have some fundamental sameness, but after a while it becomes totally different, goes in different directions. So for example, in Krishna consciousness we say that we are not the bodies. So we don't identify with bodies, we are something higher, something spiritual. And also impersonalists sees that, but their end goal is to then emerge, so they dissolve the individual personalities, but the goal of Bhakti Yoga is to develop or to again recognize the spiritual identity. Then the second quality that we have in common with impersonalist is, or philosophy type, let's say, is that seeing God in time. So, at least in my experience, so I also watched, before coming to Krishna consciousness, I watched some of these topics, and usually this modern spirituality is be in the moment, stillness, recognize the stillness in yourself, etc. So also this is somehow it's connected, somehow it is in Krishna conscious philosophy, but it has a different twist. So in Bhagavatam, 6th canto, in one verse, so the verse 15th chapter, verse 2nd, it is said, "King, why do you lament for this dead body? You may think now that you have a relationship with it, but do you think this relationship existed in the past or will exist in the future?" So Prabhupada then explains this verse that these temporary relationships don't exist in the past nor in the future, and also not in the present, right? And in this term he defines the time conception. So he then points out that even if we are in the moment, our consciousness is still materially contaminated. So we can be in the moment, but we see falsity in the reality. So relationships are, of course, we can have it with humans, but we can have relationships to our emotions, to our habits, right? So even if we are in the moment, in the stillness, this will still affect us. So by itself, the philosophy of being in the moment is not sufficient to so we can have such spiritual realizations. So further explanation of this is that one should hear and chant the glories of the Lord. Right? This verse that we had today, that Mahatmas constantly chant and hear the glories, and which means that they spend every moment focusing on this. So their present moment is always filled with Krishna consciousness, and only this is the way that we can purify our existence. It has twofold consequence. This. So in Sri Ishopanishad, Srila Prabhupada mentions that thinking about Krishna has two benefits. One is preventive, which means that it will protect us from further falling into illusion, and one is curative, which means that it heals us from current misconceptions. Right? So yeah, these are some of the qualities. So we saw impure person who preached Krishna consciousness, so it can have ill effects, and we also saw impersonalists, which also can give us a wrong direction that we step into. And we of course have to recognize and protect from such people, and the best remedy for this is that we somehow have a grasp of the philosophy, so we know these concepts inside the philosophy, such as I described, that we know we differentiate between impersonal and personal philosophy, for example. And one thing is also that even if somebody is impure and he speaks the philosophy, but according to parampara, that we can still accept this. Right? So even if somebody is not completely purified himself, if he speaks from Srila Prabhupada's books, we can still listen to this. But we have to have enough knowledge to know if something is inside that it's somehow not fitting to the philosophy. So yeah. So we see that there are many dangers also in spirituality. So it's like a Trojan horse that comes without us even noticing, right? We see some promises maybe, and even we are happy at the beginning, but then we see that maybe we took the wrong path. But we still, but Bhagavad Gita still doesn't leave us confused in this way, but it gives us explanation of who the real Mahatmas are. So who are the great souls, and what are their characteristics. Yeah, so this is actually the second verse. So there are two verses in Bhagavad Gita in this section, and this is the second verse that describes Mahatmas. And the first verse says that Mahatmas are under the protection of divine energy. They are surrendered to Lord, and they are also they focus also on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They became Mahatmas because they associated with other Mahatmas. Right? So if we listen to the Mahatma, we will also then purify ourselves, and we will begin to, the qualities that are in the Mahatma will begin to also emerge in us. So this is as in opposite with false Mahatmas, which will bring false qualities also. And in this verse, so this was in previous verse, and in this verse, one of the important aspects is that Mahatma always chants the glories of the Lord. So Satatan Kirtayantu Mam. And Prabhupada then explains that there are four components of this. There are Mahatmas praise his name, so praise Lord's holy name, praise his form, his divine qualities, and his pastimes, right? So these four things, and he does it constantly. So every moment he praises, and this is one symptom also that somebody is Mahatma. There are other symptoms which Prabhupada, but I want to get today into this direction. So yeah, so of course we have now this maybe Bhagavad Gita philosophy, but there are in Srimad-Bhagavatam there are various stories where Krishna is glorified in each of these way that I mentioned, and in terms of praising his holy name, there is a story of Ajamil. So Ajamil was a spiritually inclined person. So he had a lot of pious qualities. But one day he saw a image of a prostitute. So he saw a prostitute that was very lustful. And at that moment, he became totally focused on this image, and he started to think about this lustful prostitute. And then one day he approached her, and then they got married. And because of association, he developed then the qualities that were sinful. And he also had 10 children with her. And the last children he named Narayana. Right? So Narayana is also one name of Vishnu, of Krishna. And Narayana was also very beloved by his father and his mother. And he constantly called for him when he needed something, Narayana. And when he was so soon to leave his body, so he was old. He then before that he called very very helplessly and loudly. He chanted Narayana, right? And here is shown the power of the holy name, because when he was so helplessly calling, so without let's say some ulterior motive, he got purified. Then there's also a story how this exactly happened. But he got purified, and this shows the power of the holy name. So only calling for his son, without even in this sense, spiritually practicing. There's more to it, but he was in this way liberated. Yeah. And yeah. So we see here the power. So this was glorified, and in Srimad-Bhagavatam this was described by Shukadeva. So he glorified. Wow, what a potential has the holy name. But it's also so holy name is also termed as non-different from Krishna. But Krishna's form is described in other sections. And one of the example, so to praise his internal form, is in Brahma Samhita. So Brahma Samhita is one of the chapters of hymns of Brahma. So Brahma was the first living being in the creation of world, and he is termed a secondary creator also. And he is the first that was initiated in the so he was initiated by Krishna into the holy name, right? And he wrote, or he pronounced these hymns. And I would like to recite this one hymn, which is the most famous one in Sri Brahma Samhita, which is Venum Kvanantam Aravinda Dalaya Taksham Barhavatam Samasita Muda Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobhyam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So when he firstly read translation, so I worship Govinda, the primal Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock feather, with the figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. Jai Jai Shri Pralat Lakshmi Nrsimhadev Bhagavan Ki. Yeah, so Krishna is so attractive. So when Brahma was being encountered by him, he wrote all hymns from him, and he worshipped at the end of each line. He said, "I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord." So he was bewildered by him. So Krishna. So Krishna means all attractive. Krishna means all attractive. So even the cupids, which are these little angels with arrows, and they make everybody fall in lust. But even these cupids, he can charm Krishna with his beauty. So if probably Krishna would now enter the room, we would probably all fall unconscious. First of all, because somebody blue would come, which would be strange in our experience. But then also he's so beautiful that you cannot fathom. Yeah? So yeah, maybe one day we can do. But yes, beyond this beauty, also Lord's beauty or attractiveness shines through his actions, and these are visible through his qualities and his pastimes. So this is another. So I put these two together. But I would like to do a little bit of, let's say, change, and for this reason, because it can also, it's also applicable. I want to tell a story from Exodus, which is a part of the Bible, so Old Testament of the Bible, and where also the qualities are very nicely described. So it's a story, maybe you're familiar with it, but there was Moses, so he's termed as a representative of God. So he had God appeared to him multiple times, and they lived with his people, Israelites. They lived in Egypt, and at that time there was a very cruel Pharaoh who didn't like his people. and they were working as slaves, so they were very mistreated. And once also Moses went to Pharaoh and he asked him whether he could let his people go so they could go to the land, so to the promised land. But then Pharaoh said, no, this is, who is this God, you know? I don't believe in this God that you're talking about. And he didn't let him go. But still, after some events happened, and then he let them go, so Pharaoh let them go. And then they traveled. And this was a long path. But at a certain point, they came to the Red Sea. So from Egypt, they went to the east. And they then call from the Arabic island, semi-island, I don't know how it's English. And then there is a Red Sea. And also then, for some reason, the chariots, Pharaoh again sent the chariots behind, so the soldiers with chariots behind these fleeing people. And then they came to the sea, and God said to Moses, now you just put your staff, so put your staff, show with your staff. And then he did, and then the sea opened on two sides, right? So it was the middle path, so the middle path was surrounded by the sea, and the path was dry while the sea was as walls, you know. The sea was on either sides. And then they walked over it, and of course when chariots came to this point, then the sea closed again, and they were defeated, the soldiers of the Pharaoh. Yeah, so this is one thing I forgot to mention. So before Moses went to the Pharaoh in Egypt, the God actually told him. God actually told him, I see your suffering, so suffering of Moses' people. I see your suffering, and I see that you're oppressed. So he was very compassionate in that moment. And yeah, this story, I told this story because also in Krishna's pastime we see these qualities. So two qualities in this way. So one is this compassion. So Krishna is Dinabandhu. So, He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate. So Dinabandhu means that he's the friend of the distressed, which means that he helps those who are distressed, right? And exactly in this pastime of Moses, this is also shown. And the other quality of Krishna is that he's the Lord of all mystic powers, right? So he does something infallible, so something that you don't believe it until you see, right? So parshing with the sea, it's something that you don't see every day. And this is in Sanskrit, this is called Yogeshvara, right? So he's the Lord of the mystic powers. And also in Krishna's pastime, so we see how he always protects his devotees. When they're distressed, he always comes towards them and helps them, and also exhibits a lot of mystical power. So one of the most let's say obvious one is when he held on the finger, he held the whole hill, Govardhan hill. So this is the same mood that we also see in other scriptures. Yeah. So these are basically these praises of the Lord. So these four categories. So his name, his form, his qualities, and his pastimes. So in this way, Mahatmas, they do this constantly. They try to tell everybody about Krishna in these ways. But in my personal experience, I still see that to glorify Krishna, I have to prepare, I have to be in correct mood. Yeah. So this doesn't occur naturally for somebody who is not at Mahatma level. Yeah. also different activities of bhakti yoga may feel easier. So, for example, we may have easier time chanting, but it's hard for us to read or listen to philosophy. So we all have different dispositions also. But at the stage, of practice, this requires patience. In slang of bhakti yoga, it says that bhakti yoga is the run on long distance. So it's a marathon. It's a marathon run. It's not a sprint. 100 meters, and you quickly do, and you achieve everything, and then you can enjoy. But it's a long distance. It's a lot of practice is required. And we come to this point of how one becomes a Mahatma, right? So, as I explained, this is it's a gradual process. But Prabhupada in this verse, in purport, he says that one has to follow, or Mahatmas actually follow very strictly all the rules and regulations, so that are prescribed by Acharya. So he mentioned fasting on Ekadashi, but these rules and regulations, we can even term it as doing devotional service, so devotional activities. And Rupa Goswami, so he is one of the saints that lived approximately 500 years ago in India. So he gave 5 of the most essential processes for so devotional processes, and these are chanting the holy names, reading the scriptures like Srimad-Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, living on holy places, so living in the temple is very beneficial. Also having company of devotees, so speaking to devotees, having frequent contact with devotees. The best is personal, but also online this is also beneficial. And then also worshipping the deity with devotion. And if we simply do these 5 processes, we slowly purify ourselves. So this is the process of purifying ourselves until we develop this mood of devotion towards Krishna. And then it becomes spontaneous. So the love becomes spontaneous. It's not a matter of such practice, maybe. We gain higher taste, and naturally this practice or these activities occur. And this is, of course, then also connected to glorifying Krishna. So we then immediately, every moment we can take, right? We begin to glorify Krishna in one of his activities. So through his holy name, through his form, through his qualities or pastime. And yes, and in this way we come to the point of full spiritual realization. We realize this confidential knowledge through this purificatory process. So yeah, I would like to conclude. So to summarize, so we started with presenting false Mahatma or a false guru. Then we went to see the qualities of Mahatmas. So what are they doing, the Mahatmas? And we saw that they are glorifying the Lord through different pastimes. And then also at the end, very briefly, mentioned this process of how one. So what is the process of becoming purified and on the stage of Mahatma? So yeah, thank you for your attention and presence, and any questions, comments, or corrections.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. regarding this point of pretending, maybe you could elaborate a little bit regarding how to recognize a person who is pretending, and also recognize in oneself that I myself may be pretending to some extent.
Yeah, so so yeah, these two categories I described. So one, I would say one is a more conscious pretending. One can be termed as more also unconscious or not so realized, as you mentioned, also for ourselves. So if there is some sincerity present, then we can still pretend at some points, and this is the influence of our false ego, which constantly pulls us into certain habits of, let's say, not being pure. Right? But in the this first point, so that somebody consciously tries to pretend, right? So pretend for one's own benefit. We can recognize by his behavior. So we can recognize if by the qualities he possesses. So if he has good qualities, in this sense we can be more safe that he's not pretending. And this envy or lustful tendencies usually means that the lack of such qualities. And how to recognize him is to be in touch, as I mentioned, to be in touch with the philosophy, to know Bhagavad Gita, to also associate with devotees that may have such qualities, and then such person is obvious to us, right? But if a person is maybe impure, so if he's pretending but not really consciously, so also in ourselves we can notice this. Then, as I said, it's still, if somebody speaks in accordance to parampara, even if he's not pure, we can still receive this message. But this again requires us that we know the basic philosophy. There are some subtle points which come in the knowledge, which is, in this sense, it's hard to figure out also. So there are some small philosophical differences that it's maybe hard to get, but at least that we have some basic knowledge is required. And for ourselves, the sincerity and introspection is required, and also that we have people, so friends, devotees, that can tell us, because maybe some aspects of ourselves we see it very hardly. So if we have a friend devotee who is sincere, they will tell us, and we have to be, of course, ready to hear and not go in other direction. Yes. Anything else? Nothing. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad-Bhagavad Gita ki jai.